Hi everyone, welcome to the Finance Story Live, where we try to decode the biggest shifts shaping the world of finance, consulting, and business. This series is brought to you by Payzy and Startup Movers. Our topic and focus for today is semiconductors and India's big opportunity. Joining us to break it down for us is Sondar Raj, who's the CFO and board member at NXP Semiconductors. And thanks for really joining in today and helping us understand more about this.
Thank
Cool.
you very
So,
much. Yeah.
thank you. Sundar, my first question for you is what is NXP Semiconductor and what is the role of NXP's India operations?
Okay. So NXP Semiconductors, just to give a background, it used to be previously called Philips Semiconductors. So we have a parentage from Philips. So we came out of Philips and became NXP. And in 2015, we got merged with a company called Freescale Semiconductors, which was a spun off of Motorola. And today, NXP is the combined entity of Freescale as well as Legacy NXP. So in NXP, if I had to put in short, majorly we are in automotives. Like 50% of our revenue comes from automotive. Automotive, it means anything related to the infotainment, anything related to battery management system, or the networking part in the automotives. So if I had to give a real use case thing which will make me very close to NXP is, I think previously we used to have transactions which used to happen by swiping the cards. But today we don't swipe the cards, right? We just tap it and then the transaction really happens. And the technology is called NFC, which is near field communication. And NXP globally has more than 75% of market share in that technology itself. And a large portion of it happened out of our research and development centers in Bangalore and in India. And this is just one of the use case, and most of our RFIDs are used in most of the metros in India for the coin, metro coins, and metro accesses use. Similarly, Government of India is coming out with the e-passport, which is in the trial stage right now, and it will have NXP's chip inside it. So there is just a few items where NXP is really there. Similarly, we are in industrials as well as with other IoT and industrial ventures also. Yeah, but just to keep it short, we are available. So one of the taglines we have is provide secure connectivity to the world. And right now, our new logo is brighter together. So what we want to do is we want to, because most of the time some of the connectivity, the future cars is like car to car connectivity is going to happen. See, today car doesn't speak to the other car, but there is a technology which will start coming in wherein each car will start talking and say this car is this much of speed and I need to be in this speed, and my traffic signal is approaching fast. How I manage my speed will be taken by some of our chips which will come down the line. Similarly, one of the North Star products, which I think everybody in the industry speaks of, is software-defined vehicles. See, today, whatever automobiles we have, it's mostly manual and isolated, but this is going to become software-defined. It's as if it is going to become like our Apple phone, how we use, how the upgrades happen. Similar things will start happening in a software-defined vehicle. That's where the whole industry is moving towards. And NXP is also part of that journey.
Amazing. So I clearly understood what does NXP Semiconductor do. Okay, so NXP manufactures the chips.
See, what really happens is, if you really see, the semiconductor industry has like three variations. One is pure fabless companies. So what it means is they do just a design, and then the manufacturing is outsourced to other companies. So if I have to name a company, Qualcomm is one such company, which is fabless, means they only design and they take it up to the wafers, but then the manufacturing of that happens through the third party contractors. So they don't do any manufacturing. So that is one model. And second model is where they have purely like Intel, where they do the design, they do the manufacturing, so fully they do that. So that is other set of organization. And finally comes a company like NXP, which is a hybrid of both this model. So we do design, we do manufacture some of it, we do outsource some of it, depending on which technology or the nodes which we use. So based on that, we do that benchmarking and then strategize the supply chain accordingly.
Now, what exactly is semiconductor, right? And why today every global conversation includes the word chips, semiconductor, rare earth minerals or metals? What's happening?
Yeah, I'll come to this question, but before that, I'll just give you just a background as to what semiconductor really is, because then it becomes more appropriate what I speak. So, if you really see, semiconductor is not new. So, it started its journey in 1960s, right? I mean, that is when the semiconductor it came with just two ICs, and then slowly the transistors increased from two to billions today. So one chip contains billions of transistors inside it, and there is a law called Moore's law. So in 1962, he said is for every 2 years, the computation is going to increase 2 times more. So today, when we see our Apple phone, there is a news which says they are using the 3 nanometers, and then they will go to 2 nanometers, stuff like that. It means they are shrinking the chip, but the computational power is also increasing. So that is what it means. So when I say that was happening, some of the manufacturing which was happening in US was consciously moved in 1970s and 80s to Japan, as well as to some of the Southeast Asian countries in terms of having the economies of scale. So that was the basic purpose. So the designing used to happen in US and Europe, but most of the manufacturing used to be part of Asia. So if you really see, this change is across the globe. It doesn't happen like in one particular country or a continent. It is spread across the globe. So that used to be the supply chain for a semiconductor previously. And so somebody, if I have been in semiconductor industry in finance for more than 2 decades now. But if I had said I was in semiconductor last decade, people will say semiconductor, then they will say, is it IT? And then I will say, no, no, this is a high tech industry. Then finally, they say, oh, it's part of IT and at a higher level. And then I leave it at there. So that was the knowledge people had, or that was the visibility semiconductor had till then. But COVID changed everything. So COVID, if you see, even though it was a black swan movement and it had huge implications on the business, one of the things it got into was the pandemic just said how critical these chips are. So that became a critical point when every country, every industry said, oh, we have some link to chip manufacturing. That is when the automobile industry started coming up. That is when the other electronic manufacturing system started noticing, yes, there is a chip. Without this, it's not complete. So that is the second call, people started taking because of the COVID. And thirdly is people or the government started thinking, saying this is a strategic asset for each of the countries. So every country started moving towards like US came out with the US Chip Act, Europe came out with the Europe Chips Act, and then India came out with India Semiconductor Mission, India Chip Act, basically. So all this was saying we should try to reduce our dependency on other countries and see if we can have this happening within our country. This is the trigger point in most of the countries. So it is not only chip is not only strategic; it's for economic as well as it is geopolitical. In that way, this all these three convergence happened because of COVID, and that is where the impact of chip being spoken across the industry became very prominent.
So my question to you is, when you say India semiconductor market is going to literally triple, it's currently at 32, 30, 33 billion or maybe a little more, and it's going to triple to say 100 billion. What do you mean by the semiconductor market or industry?
You see the market. You see, electronics market is going to be 500 billion. In that,
Electronics
the
market.
semiconductor portion is going to be 100 billion. So when I
Okay.
say electronics, it means a mobile phone. It can be anything. It can be a iron box which has an electronic chip in it, or any other items where you have a chip added to it. It all comes under the electronic component part of it. In that, the semiconductor is, which I said, is the brain of most of the
Yeah.
electronic. that constitute around 20%, which is $100 billion. So this is the growth, which the India Electronic Semiconductor Association has given a survey, and they have projected that to be. And I think mobile and automobiles are going to be two major players where this usage is going to be very high.
Okay. Now, Sundar, talking about the India opportunity, like what is the semiconductor India opportunity? What exactly? So when we talk about semiconductor, what comes to my mind is US. What comes to my mind is South Korea, Taiwan, right? Where does India fall into the picture? Like I've also been reading a lot about a lot of state of Telangana, Karnataka, Gujarat, right? They're all introducing policies on semiconductor. So what exactly is happening on the ground?
Yeah. So as I told, one of the thing is, as an industry, semiconductor. There are two things, which most of the people forget when they look at semiconductor. One is the lead time is longer in semiconductor industry. Means any fab to come into play is going to take anywhere between 5 years to 7 years, depending on the technology which we wanted to bring up. And second important factor is the capital. So any fab requires $5 to $10 billion for it to come out. So there is a huge capital investment also coming into play. And thirdly is the infrastructure play, which also needs to be in place to enable the first two part of the equation to come by. So because of the lead time and then the capital intensive nature itself, uh, most of the countries, means if I have to jog back and say, what you exactly said was Taiwan, right? Taiwan in 1980s is where exactly where we are placed today, wherein most of the fundings were done by the supported by the governments through the subsidies, and then there was industry partnership also, which tried putting in the processes in place for them to become successful. And thirdly, they had a consortium of teams which was helping them to enable it. So this ecosystem is what made, like today, if you really ask me, 60 to 65% of the manufacturing of the chip happens out of Taiwan, and TSMC becomes a major lion's share of that comes from TSMC. Even the global foundries and other key players do have their factories in Taiwan, but Taiwan, that is how the whole ecosystem got developed, is what I'm trying to say. And if India needs to compete or needs to make some mark in this journey, then one is exactly what India is trying to do is $1 billion. I think 75,000 crores or something is the PLI schemes which the government of India has been providing, and they are looking at 2.0 of that schemes, wherein at least industry players say it should be more than what it was previously. Means we are looking anywhere greater than $1 billion subsidy programs from the central government. So some of the schemes, what they are doing is they are providing like 50% from the central government, and some states are giving like 20 to 25%, depending on which is the state, whether is it a Gujarat, Telangana, or Tamil Nadu, whichever is the state you are going in. This varies between anywhere between 70% to 75%, and it is changing. Means each of the states are competing against each other to open it. And I think forefront in that, I would have to say, is Gujarat is making quite a lot of effort in this, and for that matter, Tata Electronics have already announced a fabrication unit in Dholera, Gujarat, and estimated to be around $11 billion, and set to start somewhere in 2026 year. Similarly, they have Micron Inc. is other organization which has started their OSAT facility, means outsourcing semiconductor assembling and testing facility in Sanand in Gujarat, and it is expected to roll out the first chip in 2025. Means that will be the first commercial chip out of India. So which at least I am also looking forward to see those things happen, because as I said, this is a journey, and the journey is a little bit longer than what we expect in any other industry. It doesn't work like a software company where you start a company and next 6 months you have revenue flowing in, and then next 1 year you have profit margins have started picking in. That is not how this industry works, and that is where I said some people get really panicked, saying, "Oh, the people have been speaking about semiconductor, but nothing is there on the ground." And the reality is not that people don't want to do, but there is a lot of other ecosystem things which needs to come into place before we really see. And this is a long-term secular start of investment rather than a short-term focused investment. That is why I say semiconductor is a long-term economic growth driver, and it will take its lead time is much higher than the other industries.
So why did we think about manufacturing it earlier? That's one. Like, why didn't the Tatas or the big names who are always forward thinkers, why didn't they take the step? That's one.
Nah, that's a nice question, actually. I think I always keep trying to think through that. And see, what has happened is, if you really see India, it's not the first time India is trying to do this. I think in 1980s already India had started their chip related manufacturing in Mohali. So this is not a first thing, but unfortunately there was a fire, and then after that nothing took off. And I think the priorities for then government would have been different. So people never thought, and that is when exactly Taiwan and other South Korea and the countries started picking up from there and then started moving up the value chain. And there has been a second wave wherein in 2005 they tried to do something on semicon in Hyderabad and try to come out with a manufacturing setup. But unfortunately, as I said, there is a lot of other things which we have to see. Basically, the infrastructure and the skilling of the talent, and finally the incentives which I spoke about. These things were missing to a large extent then. And as I told, anything before COVID, it was not an important item that point in time. Means it was never
Yeah.
figuring out as a critical components for anybody's map. So that is, I think that may be the whole reason. And that is where I said COVID is a turning point. Even though it was a black swan movement, it has been a turning point for the chip producers and giving a lot of insights to other industries which is allied with this, which was depending on it. So I think that so this sort of focus, I will not say there was efforts, and I think those efforts have been continuing, and it is continuing even today. I would say this is the third wave wherein this is happening, and we also are closely collaborating with government as well as with academia and some of the consortiums, industry consortiums, to enable this and to become more successful, because this is something which is going to be both economically as well as strategically one of the big growth drivers. And I am hoping this time we will be successful. And as I said, we want to be cautious in not claiming winning this battle just by announcing any of the schemes or by just having one or two factories come out. But I think that should be our starting point, and our end goal should be to have it testing things coming in place, and then finally a fab which will be which will try to give end-to-end chip manufacturing within the country. And yes, we should celebrate our smart quick wins, like Micron coming out with their first commercial chip in 2025, I think by December, if I'm not wrong. But those things is what something I would also expect. We should celebrate at the same time. That should not be the end of it. I would say this is a journey which should start from now and then keep moving towards that. And two critical things I would say we need to be careful of is, one is already capital. Second thing is infrastructure is something which we need to be closely aligned. And last but not the least is the talent skilling, which becomes very, very critical for growth of the semicon industry as such. Because today what we have is a niche engineers who are designing things, but we need somebody who are skilled, semi-skilled, who can be part of the fabrication units as well as the assembly and testing units, which may really not require a high skill guy, but which requires the skilling and talent to be available for these industries to ramp up and be successful.
So when you talk about semiconductor chip designing, so why is India leading in designing? Is the focus also now only on manufacturing fab, as you say, or is it also on designing and testing and R&D?
You see, what I would say is it's largely like this, right? Means In fact, one of the other things is I used to work with Qualcomm previous to this, and when they tried setting up their office in Hyderabad, I was part of the initial core team with 20 people, and I happened to be to San Diego, and then in 2005, I think, asked them, how are we growing? They said by 2010, somewhere we should be 100. I said, fantastic. So I came back, and within 6 months, we were like 500, and within 2010, we were like 5,000 people. So, and I don't blame them because that was the yardstick for them at that point in time. And if you really ask me, some of the companies are still saying, oh, India doesn't have a market, so we are not going to expand and stuff like that. But this is exactly what is happening, because you cannot see backward track records. You need to see, but what is happening in future is something which we need to see in India perspective. And I see that the confluence is exactly happening now, wherein we have a requirement. There is an ecosystem which is getting created by the government, and then we really have an opportunity with a huge manpower available. So this is going to create a huge opportunity, is what I would expect it to happen. And yes, this is going to be very critical. And for that matter, things started coming, means the value chain, if I have to say, has come from being a support activity to all the way up in terms of India's value chain. So that is why today, what we are today, 2 decades back, we were nowhere there. So what we are today, some of the GCCs are getting established, not just as a back office functions like finance, procurement, right? Today we have R&Ds and ITs also becoming part of these GCCs, and innovation is one of the key KPIs for the GCCs, which was never the case a decade back. So what this means is, this is driving this design. This is happening because you have a huge population of design engineers available in India, and that is that is what I think is driving the design part. But manufacturing part, yeah, we have already spoken.
When you talk about talent in this space, right? How is the Indian talent? Are they very good in the semiconductor designing, testing, R&D space? And now, when it comes to manufacturing, you need another breed of talent, right? So, how do you look at it?
Now, as I said, 20% of global talent sits in India. So it means you have a high skill talent available already in India. But to the next level of it, for the manufacturing, is something which we don't have the depth of that available in India, because we don't have a ecosystem available. We don't have an industry. So we cannot blame the talent, because there is no opportunity available in India as of now. So as and when it starts coming by, we will be able to scale it. So if we jog back 2 decades back, we never had the design base what we had today. So we just did some support jobs, then started doing some value add work, then we got into live projects, then we started driving half of the project, then we started driving the end of the project. The same thing happens here also. It's a value chain you create over the years, and it doesn't happen suddenly. So you need to have your ecosystem come by, you need to have the technology come by, and then you should be at that place. So all these three components make the talent availability also. That is where I said one of the things we do with the colleges, the education institution, is come up with some of the things which is useful for scaling up skills which is needed at the next manufacturing level or at the testing level.
Most of our readers, most of our audience is CFOs, CFOs, finance guys, tax professionals, right? What is in it for them, and what should they understand and know about this industry?
Most of your strategies. So you are an electronics company, yeah, you don't know anything of the chip, which is fine. But whether you can source it from outside of India, whether you can in-source it within India, and what is the cost involved in it. See, these are all the factors which will come by for any of the electronic manufacturing CFOs in India. Similarly, some of the PLI schemes, the other schemes which the central government as well as the state governments we have been giving, it helps the organization to see whether it makes the real ROI for them from what industry they are in. Is it a good thing to go and navigate? See, exactly that's what Tata did, right? They were never in manufacturing of fabs, but then they are investing in it. They are starting in AMPS. So some other Indian consortiums are trying to do the same thing. So some of the CFOs is their product, how it is linked to the chip is something which they need to already see and not isolate, because that is a critical component of their whole value chain. So that is that is one thing the CFOs need to see. Second thing is how this risk reward happens in terms of, as I said, there is a lead time and there is a huge capex involved, and how do you see the return on income of those things with the subsidies given by the central state governments, which help them in locating at the appropriate and the exact location which they want to be in. That decisions are driven basically out of that. And lastly is, as a CFO, it's not just that you see the numbers and say, yeah, I know my industry, I know my number. Because as digital transformation kicks in, your competitors are not the competitors today. It will be somebody outside, because data is driving all the industries. So tomorrow Tesla can be your competitor directly, or Google can be your competitor, because the data are available with them, and they can be a sudden competitor in a digital world. So that sort of it is slowly becoming industry agnostic. So your competitors are not only whom you know, but they can be from across any of the industry firms. So that is something which CFOs need to know and need to understand, because there is a disruption which is happening already, and there is going to be a disruption in the business models which is going to come by. And chip related thing can be one of the use cases for them, even though they may not be involved in it, but they can know that this is something which is disrupting industry, and it can disrupt our industry also. So that is something which they can always take back and start looking at their own industry, and then see how their industry journey for the next 5 years, 10 years is going to happen. Because when I say one fab is going to be 10 billion, it means at least 10 fabs is what we are looking.
Okay. And any advisory tax opportunity for tax professionals in this space with the growing interest of semiconductors in India?
Yes, because see, one of the thing what happens is, as I said, some of the technologies are all mostly driven by some of the foreign companies, or TSMC for that matter. They own the process technology for manufacturing. So even if you have to start a fab in India, it's always good to go and start having joint ventures with them, or take a technological transfers with them. In that way, that will help the industry to scale up faster than what is the timeline. One second thing is also to scale up the technology in the process which is latest. Otherwise, if we start developing a technology today, it will take a decade for us to go and see what they are in. By then, they would have moved back ahead one more decade. So having this knowledge transfers and having the IP things, these are all very critical, and all the tax issues starts coming there, because you will have transfer pricing kicking in, you will have IP related things coming by. That is where the professional CS will start coming into play, because they are going to advise, saying what is the subsidy available in which state, and how it can be ensured that the business models are much better, much economical, and profitable. So there is the advice, those people can come by and advise.
Okay, so I have this question. First they said data is the new oil. Now they're saying chips is the new oil. Is it true?
Yeah. I mean, so you see, it is true, because data is the new oil is absolutely right, because as I was mentioning earlier, the data drives the business models, and that is going to be, and futuristically that is going to happen also. And we have seen previously cases like Blockbuster and Netflix, how the digitalization has revamped the total industry itself. As such, some industry was able to adapt, and Netflix became successful, and Blockbuster is nowhere here today. And same thing will happen in all the industries, what I'm saying, because this digital transformation is driving the business model, which is going to be very different. Because previously, verticalization of automobile industry was not thought of till Tesla came out, and they said we are going to do everything. And they have a gigafactories which they are planning to make in every 5 minutes. Will make one car out. That is something which is a north star for them, and they are working towards that. And that is the same thing which is going to happen with other industries also. And this is going to be the opportunity for many of the CFOs, because as long as you don't, it may be impacting the other industries, but it may be very, very fast, because of the digital transformation, AI, and all your 5G and 6G disruptions happening. Your business is going to get disrupted. If you think you are not, then I think you are in a shell, because today everything is slowly becoming transparent, it's becoming more global. and we need to be available there. Second thing is your margins. Means what I always say is most of the services are what we do, or the goods we supply become commoditized. Once you commoditize, your margins will start falling in, as long as you don't put added value into it. That is where exactly I said is we do a chip and we put a software on top of it, and it becomes more value added than just a chip, because chip becomes a commodity. Down the line, your margins will start shrinking as more and more people start chipping in. So as long as you don't add value to whatever services you are doing, you are looking at a wall down the line. It may be, see, it may be differ with each of the industries, because the adoption of each industry is very different. But you have to be aware that digital transformation and technological transformation is disrupting your business models, and and you, as a CFOs, you have to see that as a data is one of the aisle and other aisle is the chip, with a huge potential and opportunity available.
What role does China play in this entire chip industry, right? What is rare earth minerals or metals? What do you call it? And what is used in making these chips? Does India have those products? If no, why we don't have the products? It's a natural resource, so maybe that's why.
Yeah. You see, the whole thing is it's more about awareness and the opportunity should meet the technology. Then you have all the three in place. That is when the magic happens. So today we have the awareness of, oh, chip is important and we need the chip. So, and I think technologically we are having it, and as and when the manufacturing kicks in, we will be able to do it. See, why China? Because this is where the geopolitical sort of things angle comes into play, and why India wants to do it by itself, or why US wants to do by itself, is because they see a risk of China and at Taiwan, and they don't want to be impacted by the supply chain disruption which happened at the COVID. So this is mostly people are trying to do a BCP for their supply chain, and that is what is driving that. Yeah, rare earth mineral is something which is used at the fabrication level, and when and these minerals, in fact, including gold and other minerals, get into it, and they are trying to find a replacement as silver to see if it can go through. But the gold is something which is also used as a part of chip manufacturing. And one other thing which is not spoken about is the purity of water which is needed to get this fabrication out. And clean air is the other factor, which also needs to be there for fabrication. And I don't say, see, as of today, it is available there. We have not explored for it or not looked at that as an opportunity. And I'm sure, I think government and other agencies will look into it and either find sources outside of China, because that is how China plus one strategy came into play. And India was nowhere in the supply chain until 2020 or now. And that gave us an opportunity to be part of this play and be a part of supply chain in the semiconductor. And I see, yes, it is. We may not have all the answers immediately, but this is something which I'm sure it is happening in the background, not with much noise, but we will get there either with China or China plus source available for that.
Okay, cool. Sandra, thanks again. Thank you so much for your time.